Welcome to the Power of Nature podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Waldo. In this show, I talk about how nature and the natural world can communicate with us, how it can communicate directly and individually with each of us, and how this can create immeasurable benefits for us in our lives. I share stories of my experiences doing this as part of a regular and ongoing practice, and I talk to others about their experiences with the power of nature as well. So join me as we go on a journey of learning about the power of nature, how it can communicate directly with us, and the impact that it can have on our own lives. Welcome back to the Power of Nature podcast. In today's episode, I want to talk about the seasons and how much the seasons, and in particular, I'm going to be talking about spring, can just how important they can be in us learning to live in ways that are beneficial for us. So let's dive into this. In Montana, we had been having really, pretty cold weather. We had a spell of not super long and not as cold as it's ever been, but like in single digits and below single digits for a little while, and then we kind of came up to around the 30s, 20s in Fahrenheit, and the snow started melting, and things got kind of muddy and bleary and dreary, as I talked about in episode 27. But the last couple of days, the sun has been out. Today, I think we hit, I don't know, it was warm. It was warm outside, maybe in the 40s, maybe even 50. I'm not sure. But and then it got cold again this evening. But it's been a change in weather, and it feels like spring. As a matter of fact, I even moved my horses over from one pasture to the other. And I was thinking about how much I love the seasons, and how much the more I tune into the seasons, the more like they share their wisdom with me. I was thinking about how, I love winter, actually. And winter is often a time of kind of slowing down and going inward, which is kind of what, a lot happens in Montana. Our plants kind of have died off, and there's just snow on the ground, and there's kind of a quiet stillness. But then when spring comes, you start to see things emerge. Birds seem to come out, animals seem to come out. You might see some new leaves or plants, buds kind of coming out. We're not quite seeing that yet, but I kind of got a taste of it today with just the feeling of spring. It kind of felt like spring. Now, there are a lot of like crazy experiences in Montana where we can like have what seems like a spring, and then we could go right back into the winter and have it be really cold. So I never know what is going to happen. But the thing is that I think spring is such, I don't know, it's like spring was giving me a message today about how in spring, it's an opportunity for letting go. And it's funny, this idea of like letting go has been coming up to me in many different ways. I have a new podcast called Art Flow, and it's about art. And I have an episode related to a painting I did called Let Go that it seems to also tie into this, which is this idea of like, to me, letting go is where something existed. And the idea is that even if it existed and we didn't like it, that we can let go of it, that there is a letting go that can happen, that we don't have to keep reliving over and over and over again the same things. We can, in just accepting kind of like where we are and not trying to, get upset about it and get rid of it and run away from it or ignore it or fix it. I find that those things don't work. But when we just sit with whatever our circumstance is and we just let ourselves be aware of whatever our feelings are on it, that is actually what allows us to let it go and let new opportunities, come about. And I guess I was feeling like Mother Nature was kind of speaking to me in a way in my awareness today about this, because I was thinking about like, a plant or a tree, like the plants and trees or trees with leaves or whatever. There's no like when a tree has leaves and it goes into, it has its leaves in a 4-season, like a 4-season kind of climate, like is what I experienced growing up in Pennsylvania. And it's this little bit different here in Montana, but we have 4 seasons. They're just a little bit different in duration and intensity. But it's like when I look at fall, summer first is plants and there's growth. There's that happens. And then fall is kind of where things, dry up. They start to like die off. They prepare for the winter. And then in winter, there is a kind of like a hibernation, just sleeping, just kind of letting go of like trying to create new things. It's just like nothing usually grows in the winter in a cold season. It's just not when it happens. It happens in the spring, but nature doesn't fight, and I think this is like what I'm trying to articulate is what I was getting as a feeling today, that I feel like I have struggled to remember this, but nature gives us such amazing guidance on this. Like nature doesn't go, oh my gosh, those leaves were, those leaves last season were not that good. So we've got to like think about how to kill them off and come up with a new leaf, and then nature doesn't like think about it and think about it and think about it and focus on it and focus on it and focus on it and focus on it. Nature just does it. It just like the leaves come off of the trees. They, get crunchy underfoot and then they start decomposing. The snow comes down And then new growth starts to happen, maybe starting in the winter, under the surface, and then you start to see it in the spring. And I feel like this is such a metaphor for what we can embrace in our lives. At least this is something that's been helpful for me. It's like so many times without even realizing I was doing it, it's like I was holding on to an old way of living. I maybe thought about how I didn't like it, and I want to change it, and I want to do something different, and I want to have a different experience. But it's almost like I do all this thinking about it. I do all this stewing about it. I do all this pondering it, but I don't just kind of accept it and kind of be like, okay, this is what has been and what is, and I'm just going to accept it without needing to change it. But what I've come to learn is that I never move on to the next thing. The next thing never emerges for me until I have fully just kind of accepted and let go of needing to fix and trying to control or trying to direct or trying to think about what it is I didn't like. It's like the awareness that I don't like it is key, and I don't want it. But if I stew on it and I try to figure out what to do instead, and I try to create my new plans for what I'm going to do differently, it's like the new never begins. The next thing never comes. And it's almost like it's because I didn't ever just really kind of make peace with what was, be like, I know this happened, and just kind of make peace with it. And I find that, nature is such an inspiration, because nature does the opposite of that. Nature shows us how we can kind of be more in sync with our own nature, which is what I've come to understand is when we get graspy, when we get, this is what I feel like when I've gotten, kind of graspy, or I'm making up that word, but where I kind of grip onto things, or I feel like I've got to make this different this time, or what if this happens again, or I've got to make these big changes, or I want to take the wheel and do things differently. It's like it doesn't serve me. It's almost like I go against the flow of my own well-being. And, usually when I get into that space, it's coming from kind of it's coming from a sense of fear or insecurity or doubt. When I simply trust the well-being of the world, trust that I'm okay no matter what, trust my own well-being, trust my body, trust my heart, trust myself, my inner self, and all of me. I don't have to get into that grasping state. I don't have to feel like I need to change this thing or fix this thing, because it's like I know that just in kind of deciding, do I like this or do I not like this, and then just accepting that, it's like that is what allows the new thing to come to me. And that is what allows maybe a new idea or a new inspiration or a new solution or whatever. But it doesn't ever come when I'm fixated on what has been, or I'm trying to change what has been, or I'm trying to think about what has been, or I'm trying to, I'm worried about repeating what has been. It's like I have to completely let go of what has been, and I have to completely let go of what will be, and simply be present without any attachment, and just simply let go. And in the letting go, what I find is that the new comes, just like Mother Nature shows us with, plants, how they just put out new leaves. The plant doesn't go, oh gosh, I don't know, those leaves last year, they were just not strong enough. They weren't strong enough. It wasn't good enough. It's not what I wanted. Da 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 da. The plant doesn't do that. The plant just is. The plant just trusts its flow. The plant just trusts its own well-being. And in doing so, it moves in the harmony, the divine harmony of flow of nature and what is natural. And I feel like there are just so many lessons that we can take from nature, about doing this, about living in flow, about understanding that we can experience well-being and the flow of new experiences that we want, and new things, and abundance of ideas and solutions and good feelings and experiences when we allow ourselves to just be in our present moment and be at peace with it, and trust that flow, and trust our inner self. And this is something that is a dance that I've been, learning more and more how to do. How do I do this? How do I live inspired, and aligned with nature more? How do I create things in flow and aligned with this kind of energy, in terms of my work as an artist, and in terms of anything that I want to create and share with the world? How do I do it? How do I do it with the animals in my life? I have 2 podcasts about horses, and how do I do it with them? How do I do it with all the animals in my life? Our cats, our dogs, our chickens, the deer that live on our property, all of them, my pet mice, our lizard. How do we do it with them? And how do we do it with each other? How do we do it with the people in our lives? How do we let them live their lives, and we focus on understanding how to man our own ship with our own energy and our own life, in having the kinds of experiences that we want to have, that allow us to live in harmony, and let other people have their experiences and we have our own. And I feel like time and time again that nature, once again, shows me the way, once again communicates with me, once again helps me understand things that are just so valuable to understand, so in sync with how I want to live and the way I want to be in the world moving forward. So that's what I wanted to talk about in today's episode. And I'm going to leave it at that until the next time. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Power of Nature podcast. To learn more about me and my other offerings, you can visit my website at michellewaldo.com. That's MICHELLEWALDO.com.